Ratchet and Clank.
A Lombax named Ratchet and a robot he calls Clank team up with a group of heroes known as the Galactic Alliance in order to stop a madman named Drek from destroying the galaxy. The good. This movie is based on the Ratchet and Clank video game series on PlayStation. Having played several of these games myself, I can give you a pretty good idea of how they did on the adaptation. They did good. The world we're presented and the tone that comes with it fits my experience playing the video games almost to a T. I say almost because it's a movie, certain things about the experience are different. But if you're a fan of the Ratchet and Clank series, there will be plenty of elements for you to recognize and lots of things for you to enjoy. And if you take your fanboy sentiments a step further and consider yourself a fan of PlayStation in general, you're going to find a lot of Easter eggs having to do with that as well. Now, some of you might not be familiar with the Ratchet and Clank universe, but might still be interested in checking out this movie. Rest assured that this movie does a good job of introducing the world and characters to new audiences, so you won't be lost. The world of Ratchet and Clank is host to a variety of very unique and awesome weapons. In addition to the fun action sequences you're going to see with these weapons, this movie also comes up with a good plot device that mimics the game's mechanic of you have a large arsenal of weapons that you can access at any time without having to carry them on your person. Nearly the entire runtime of this movie is rampaged upon with comedic moments. The Ratchet and Clank series is known for a very particular sense of humor, combining cheeky attitudes, funny archetypes that they fabricate, and a certain level of self-awareness. The iffy. Despite most of the video game cast returning and reprising their roles, Paul Giamatti is the person who plays Drek in this movie, when in the video game he was played by Kevin Michael Richardson. And I don't know if there was any specific history behind that, but something tells me that Kevin Michael Richardson would have been perfectly happy to come back and play Drek if given the opportunity. The humor in this movie can occasionally be a bit much. There's so much of it that there are certain moments that are meant to feel heavy that don't feel quite as heavy as they should. Further, a lot of this movie's humor comes from slapstick, which isn't bad, but there is a lot of it and it can get old sometimes. And as for the quips, there's so many of them, not all of them can be gold. Don't get me wrong, this movie is still very funny. I just think it's more novel if you're playing the game, you get to kick a bunch of bad guy butt and stuff, and then you get to kick back and watch a funny scene with some of these characters, and I think the humor works a little better in that medium. The characterization of Ratchet in this movie is great, as it should be because he's played by James Arnold Taylor, the guy who's been voicing him for over a decade. Early on in the movie, it's established that Ratchet has a particular knack for mechanics, and frankly, I just think there should have been more of it in this movie than there was. The bad. I think a byproduct of this movie being based on a video game is that there's certain things about the experience that are meant to be experienced as a video game. But since you're not playing a video game and experiencing these things with the characters and having a more immersive experience, you might start to realize that the plot is fairly standard and oftentimes very predictable, and the characters aren't exactly complex. So for people who are movie fans but not necessarily video game fans, this might not be the most enriching movie experience you have. The verdict? If you're a fan of the Ratchet and Clank video game series, you're going to have a lot of fun with this movie. It captures the spirit of the games perfectly. If you're someone who's not really a fan of the Ratchet and Clank video game series or isn't familiar with it, it's still a very fun, hilarious space movie that I think you will have a good time at anyway. This is Detective Steve, and I saw Paul Giamatti's name appear first in the credits, giving me the impression that he got top billing. Now, if Paul Giamatti is getting paid more than the actors who actually played the titular characters Ratchet and Clank, well, that just ain't right.